Satya, in the last episode, we had discussed how to use the hypothetico-deductive method and use it to solve wicked problems, or at least diagnose wicked problems. This episode, we would like to delve into how to frame this problem right.
Yeah. So, Shelja, if you look at the entire topic of framing a problem, right, or also defining a problem, that is very well captured in the philosophy of science. So, I think we can borrow a lot from there.
Oh, again, since you're again suggesting science as, science for management issues.
You know my obsession.
Yeah, I do. But I would like to understand whether you really think management is a science or an art?
I think, Shelja, the cliche answer that everybody believes in is that it's a little bit of both. So, let's try to dissect, because I don't like this answer, it doesn't help anyone. Now, if you dissect the word art, what do people mean when they say management is an art? I am sure they don't mean that decisions are like poetry or a painting to be appreciated, right? They are using more of the word art as a metaphor to mean what? I guess they believe that organizations are full of people, and there are different kinds of people with different emotional backgrounds, with personality types are very different, and you got to take people along, because if you have thought of something, you got to get it implemented, right? You got to take people along. Now, taking people along means navigating these various personality types, and there is no formula to do that, and you have to use all the tricks that you have, and any guy who's married would know that navigating personalities and to get them to agree to what you're saying is not science, is the realm of art. So that's what they mean when they say management is an art. But I'm sure a lot of managers would agree that they face problems like the inventory has gone up, and why it has gone up, or the sales has come down, why it has come down, and that requires evidence based problem solving. That definitely is the field of science.
So do you mean to say that management is an interplay between art and science?
As I said, I still don't like that answer, and why I don't like this answer, because problems are not so clearly demarcated for managers that, hey, this is the problem of people, this is the problem of let's say a scientific endeavor. So wear a hat of that artist and wear the hat of scientist. These problems are not so well demarcated. Like, for example, if the sales is down, you could have issues that you have a nasty sales manager, because of which, let's say, all the subordinates are demotivated, and you got to deal with that as a artist, but at the same time with more empathy and those people based solutions, right? But it could also be that it's because of let's say a faulty pricing policy, right? So
that's true too,
and the opinions are all over the place, right? So just by telling that it's little bit of both is not helping us out. That's the issue, and that's why I'm taking a bet here. I'm going to take it to an extreme and say management is always a science. Always wear the hat of a scientist. That's my tall claim.
Oh, that is seriously a tall claim. But what exactly do you mean by science then?
Okay, good that you ask a question, because this is the most misused terminology, and people use it to describe any subject. So science, if we go to philosophy of science, it is very well defined as to what subject classifies as science. So any explanation that we are giving for a topic, we can call it a science if your explanation is testable and falsifiable.
Sure.
Now let me use an example from the field of science itself. So if you look at let's say the second law of thermodynamics, right, it clearly says that you cannot build a perpetual machine ever, right?
That's true.
Because you cannot use the entire heat energy, some of it will get dissipated, it is non-usable. So you can't have a machine that runs on its own without additional energy inputs. That's impossible. Now if somebody builds a machine like that, then this theory is wrong. So when I say it is falsifiable, when it is testable, that means it clearly has a boundary condition on which it can fail. So that is why it is said that your explanations, if are testable and falsifiable, right, then we can say that whatever you are presenting as your hypothesis is scientific. Like if I take an example of scheduling, right, and we do a lot of scheduling in the shop floor. So some of the things that we do schedule, some of the solutions that we use, we say that this is applicable only in low touch time environments, right? This is applicable only in high touch time environments.
This is where you're defining the boundary
We are
condition.
saying that those boundary conditions, we know where the theory can fail. It's not vague, right? It has a clear boundary conditions of failure, and that allows you to put up a test of failure. So you actually understand that when you have such kind of clear explanations, right? You know, and particularly around your problems, you know that there are many solutions which will not fit in, because there is actually a yes and no answer, right? It's not like brainstorming, you have any idea that can go under the table. It's when your problems are scientific, by definition we call it it's a well posed problem.
So we are saying that having a clear definition of the problem itself helps define the boundary conditions.
Yes.
This is really interesting because it's a huge advantage to then have a well posed problem. How does this work for management problems?
Yeah, so let's look at, you touched upon the topic of there's a huge advantage, right? So let's look at what are the advantages. So if you have a problem which is well posed and everybody understands the boundary conditions, right? So the buy-in is very easy because people know that this is a wrong solution and it's a right solution. So it's a logical way of discarding solutions without offending people. That is number one. The number two is when the solution let's say fails, you know exactly what needs to be trimmed, right? So so since we are debarring a lot of solutions to get in, right, we get focus because we have only one or two solutions that qualify, rest all are out of the table. So implementation becomes sharper, you have less solutions under in WIP. Buy-in is very easy, and if things fail, we know exactly what has failed. So that's the idea of what a well posed problem.
This is really good, but can you tell me how does this work in the case of a specific management problem that you can take?
So the question is, how do we know that our problems have reached that status of being well posed in management, right? So I would take this topic to the chronic problems, right? The problems that organization keeps on repeating, solutions don't work and it stays on for a very long period of time. Now if you look at the chronic problems, I am giving you 3 set of criteria to understand whether your problem has been framed properly or rather is the problem well posed or not. So one thing you would agree that in organizations problems are connected to each other, and intuitively managers understand that, for example, if your sales is flat, right? So if your sales are flat, obviously your sales guys would be demotivated, they are not getting their bonuses. So look at the demotivation problem and the sales are flat, they are connected. Now if sales are flat, you would also expect that the operations is also not having good utilization, right?
I guess.
So your costs are going up, costs are going up, utilization is down. So you see how the problem of sales are flat is connected to various topics, right? So the first part of defining a well posed problem is to understand these interconnections, how the problems are causally linked to the different domains or departments, and you should not stop there. When you start connecting it, right, you will find the hotspot or the leverage point, right? This leverage point is a node from where all the other problems are connected. It's all emanating from there, right? So if you are able to describe your problem as an interconnection of various other problems and also find out the hotspot of where all this is emanating from, which means that you are clearly demarcating the symptoms versus the core problem or the leverage point, and I'm using these words interchangeably, then you have the first criteria is met. The point number 2 is the second criteria. is that if you look at organizations, the fact that they have stayed with the problem for long, and many of them intuitively understand the leverage point, right? But they have not been able to move the needle.
Why would that be?
The only reason is that if you try to solve the problem, there is some damage, something would happen somewhere else, and that kind of so there is a conflict.
Stalemate.
Yeah, that's kind of stalemate. That if I solve it in the intuitive way, which is seeming as the answer, something else will get jeopardized.
So they
right?
can't do anything about it.
So you are like stuck. So this is my leverage point, but there is a paradox or a conflict associated with that. I mean, in society at large, if you look at, let's say, the topic of climate change, it's very much closely linked with the economic needs, the need of people to go up the poverty lane, right? So poverty line. So they need to use more energy. So you see, these two topics are closely linked. You can't, and that's why it's a difficult problem to solve. So everywhere, or let's say, the problem of inventory, you want to increase the inventory, the availability will improve, but then the cost, the finance guy is not happy, right? So if you see, the problems are always an interplay of a paradox. It's very important to verbalize that paradox, which means that your solution has to address the paradox in a win-win way. Then only that is a real solution, otherwise it's a one-sided solution. Okay. So that's the second criteria for what we call as a well-posed problem. I'll put a third criteria, which is kind of linked to the first two, which is that if your solution is kind of addressing, right, the core problem and addressing the paradox in a win-win way, this means that you're going to solve a whole lot of symptoms or other problems that are there, right? Which means the second check is, or the third check is, that you're going to release a whole lot of managerial capacity. Because when you have so many other problems, right, somebody is trying to deal with that, and there are a lot of overheads to kind of stay with those other problems. So if suddenly they vanish, you should release a tremendous amount of management capacity, right? So this is
awesome.
Yeah, so which means that I would say a problem definition should meet these three criteria. The first is you should understand the interconnections, understand the leverage point. Second is you understand the hidden paradox in that, right? The hidden paradox tells you how to create a win-win solution, meet both the needs. And the third thing is your solution, is it going to release a huge amount of managerial capacity? If these three things are met, then you can say it's a very well posed problem, and this is moving management closer to science, because we now have a clear a barricade of stopping solutions to enter into the problem solution space.
It sounds awesome, but can you give an example?
Okay, so let's look at the wicked problem that as a country we have not been able to solve, right? Is the pollution that North India experiences every winter. It's still not resolved.
The Delhi pollution.
Delhi pollution, it's Delhi and nearby areas,
Yeah,
it's entire North India. So if you look at the AQI levels, it reaches world record levels, right?
That's true.
And interestingly, why it happens in winter, right? It happens because of this concept of what the people say is temperature inversion, right? So that's the thing that happens in winter, right? And on top of it, what happens is you have this stubble burning problem,
Punjab.
right? In Punjab, Haryana,
Nearby
yeah,
areas.
and those days where the stubble burning is happening, and that 1 month period where people are moving from harvesting rice and to sowing of wheat, that's when that problem, the pollution problem, is linked to how people are harvesting a crop. That's the interlinkage that we are talking about, right? Now if you look at and explore what is happening out there, so people, if you see the rice cultivation gets over, and you have a very short period by which you should sow the wheat, right? And so your field has to be, you're going to remove the stubble, and the
Make
fastest way, make it ready, and the fastest way and the cheapest way is to burn it.
I think there are mechanical devices.
Yeah, but those are expensive, right? So there are so many farmers. So yes, that's the recommended thing. But the easiest way for any farmer is to just burn it out. And
I think there might be some benefits in terms of fertilizing the next crop.
Yeah, so first is to clear off the land, because if you delay it, then your sowing is delayed and then the harvesting time is delayed. And remember, here every farmer is trying to be first in the market, right? So they have to do it as soon as possible. So otherwise your prices starts crashing. So anybody who harvests first gets the price advantage. So there is this rush for doing it at the right time. So you get a very short period of time, burn it out, and it's a very natural need of people who are poor and do it. So the question you might ask is, why is this window so small? You can also ask a question, is that why do you have to grow only rice and wheat, right?
Yeah, you can grow vegetables.
Yeah, you can grow vegetables. So the interesting point is, we are now started from a pollution in Delhi. We now getting into a problem of how wheat and agriculture. So just look at the cross domain linkages. So if we dive down deeper here, you will find out that why do the farmers in Punjab and Haryana love these crops, right? It has got a fantastic thing. First of all, as compared to vegetables, this is a very low maintenance crop, and second, rice is very rice intensive, and you get free power, at least in Punjab, right? So your inputs are free, and so extracting groundwater, it's free because the power is free for them, right? And on the outcome, which is like on the selling price, it's guaranteed by the MSP. So it's really good business, right? Less efforts, right? And you get your inputs almost free, and there are a lot of these subsidies that are coming in, and your output. So your profit margins are so well covered, right? So that's why people love these crops. So now look at this, that if you're giving free subsidy for, let's say, agriculture, it also has an impact on the discoms, the distribution companies, power distribution companies. Their profitability is impacted because, and also they have to extract this money from the industry. So the power to the industry is higher,
more expensive,
right? So which impacts the industrialization. So look at the topics now. We are talking about Delhi pollution. We got into agriculture. Then we got into discom, electricity, right? It is very important, as I said, the first criteria, to understand the interlinkages. And if you look at, as I said, not just the interlinkages, but to find out the hotspot. And by the way, also this is also related to the topic of water table diminishing at a much faster pace in Punjab and Haryana, right? The water table. So it's awaiting a water crisis. So you look at how many different problems, and clearly we know where the hotspot is, right? The hotspot is the subsidy that is being given, right? So what's the paradox here? So criteria number 1 is met. I found out the hotspot. I know, right? What's the paradox here? The paradox here is, look, the farmers are poor. You got to help them, and so subsidy is very, very important. And now you have to find out a way from this paradox. And that's where you try to find out all kinds of assumption. And by the way, we'll not get into solutioning right now. I don't think we should sit here and develop a solution. It's becomes too audacious. But one fact that needs to be explored is 80% of the subsidy, particularly for electricity, it goes to farmers who own more than 5 acres, to the rich farmers.
So all farmers are not poor.
So I'm not saying it's an easy solution to implement or what. I'm just trying to highlight our process, right? Just imagine if you're able to solve that problem, right, at the place where it matters, then you would have a whole lot of different effects, right? And the third criteria of releasing capacity and a lot of money that is being used up to deal with this problem. So you would have issues like let's say multiple crops growing, the water table not getting eroded so fast, right? People would look at it in a totally different way. So you are having a very forced economics that you have imposed onto one kind of farming, that if you deal with it, people will look at multiple crops. And if you look at multiple crops and this rush for clearing of the land, and people will do rest of rice and grow other crops, many things, discoms will not be affected so much, water table, Delhi pollution. So I'm not saying this is I'm just trying to put forward a thinking process that is required to see how there is a leverage point, and how there is a hidden paradox, and how when we solve a problem, we solve so many other problems together, right? We release a lot of capacity.
So does that mean all problems can be reduced to this approach?
Absolutely. And I'm talking about the big problems, the chronic problems, they stay for long because of the stickiness with the other problems, because of the paradox, right? And because of multidisciplinary, multi-agency approach, multi-department approach, which typically organizations or let's say various administration setups are broken up into different agencies, right? And that prevents them from solving problem holistically. But at least in organizations, right, you are broken up into departments. There's a very important need to look into a mindset where we are trying to look things cross-functional and trying to find out where the leverage point is and solve the problem by finding out the paradox, and also when you do that you release capacity.
But it sounds that all problems can, if you are making this claim that all problems are like linked to a scientific method, then there doesn't seem to be much of a room for empathy and for...
Yeah, so I'll come back to this issue. So let's look at people in organizations, right? And I'm not talking about making one individual happy. I'm looking at people in organizations at a large, right? And most of the organizations, I'm sure, people have an issue because they have conflicts with the other departments. They go into meetings and they have to defend their turf, and they feel that they're doing somebody else's work that they should not be doing, and that's the primary source of all the conflicts or the demotivation that's happening out here, right? So the approach that I'm talking about, if we try to do that, we'll solve problems in a much faster pace. We're going to change structure, policies, procedures. We're going to re-engineer the environment, and when you start doing that, the interpersonal conflict starts coming down as well, right?
So you're saying that most need for this empathy or all this people problems has systemic origins.
Yes, and as long as you're doing that, right, as a manager, you're there to solve these problems. As long as you're doing that, you're making lives of people better in masses, right? How you deal with one individual, right, that topic is a very minor topic, right? I mean, even if you are, let's say, the most obnoxious person, right, in dealing with people, but if you are solving problems, right, you're helping people, and people see that. You make lives of, for example, when we work with organizations, right, and one of the things that we do is break the month end and the quarter end skew.
That's true.
Look at the impact of a month end and a quarter end skew. You make the life of that manager miserable, right? Because on that last week of that quarter, think of topics of stress and the work-life balance, everything goes for a toss, right? People expect you to work for 90 hours in a week and all that. You might be the most empathetic person, right? You can say, you can talk sweetly to a person, right? But that does not solve, right? And you can be the most obnoxious person in terms of, talking to people. But if you need to solve this problem, right, you really help people.
Yeah, it's true.
Right? You impact his life. So you got a choice, right? What do you really want to do? Do the soft talking or solve a problem where you're impacting lives of people in a realistic manner.
Absolutely.
Not just talk in a manner that sounds good, right? So I think the role of managers is to look at solving problems sustainably, and by that you will impact lives of people, right? And you'd remember, one of our implementations, right, where we increased the output of this engineer to order company, and close to by 50%, then another 50% in the second year. And what we did, reduce the number of working days from 6 days a week to 5 days a week. Now, just imagine the impact that you have had on people, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that more powerful, right? Far happier. And let's say you are that the guy who takes people for a task. When you do a mistake, you don't come across as a very nice person. People can live with it. Make real impact to lives of people, and that's what I say is where the hat of a scientist, you will make a real big deal in lives of people, right? And that's why I said, let's not break our head. What is art? What is science? Just wear the heart of the scientific guy. You will also be the most empathetic person.
That's true. So from what I get from you is a significant chunk, or maybe even more than 90% of people problems in organizations can actually be solved by putting on the hat of a scientific, or the scientific hat.
Yeah. In fact, if you are empathetic enough, then only you will wear this hat, because you really care about you really care about these problems, right, and you want them to be solved. So the most empathetic person is also the most scientific person, and vice versa. There is no dichotomy that this is the hard guy and this is the soft guy. I don't like that. These two have to be combined. What gives people the energy to deep dive and solve this problem unless you have empathy towards people?
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's amazing. For people who may not have the patience to listen to our conversation with as much interest as I took in this, can you give the key points which is necessary to poise a problem well or pose a problem well?
Yeah. So first of all, we are talking about how do you frame a problem, particularly when you are seeing a chronic problem, a problem that you are trying to solve over and over again. Most of the solutions didn't work, it's something improved, then again deteriorated, those kind of issues. And I think every organization has a set of those problems. Don't try to solve it in you see a problem and then attack it at the place of origin, right? So for example, if you have a manufacturing efficiency issue, try to see how it is linked to the other unsolved problems. They would be linked with each other. So the first criteria that I said is that look for interlinkages and look for the leverage point. That's the first criteria. The second criteria I said is that finding out a leverage point is not enough. Find out the hidden conflict of solving that problem. So there is always a hidden paradox. You have to find out a win-win solution, right? Find out what is the wrong assumption to break out of this conflict and meet multiple needs. And the third check, right? It's like another check which is kind of meets the first two requirements, that if your solution is really powerful, it should release a lot of capacity, because you have, your solution is dealing with so many different problems. It's like a silver bullet, right? Right. So if you do these three things, this is where I say that you wear a hat of a scientist, and this is what a well-posed problem is all about.
And it will help you not only solve system problems, organization problems, it will also solve
the hard problem and the soft problem. It can solve both problems. Yeah.
That's true.
Okay.
It's an amazing conversation. Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Satya.
Thank you.